He was a golden boy. He was an ice king. One tackle could end a career or start a forbidden romance. In a world of glittering gala dinners and brutal tabloid scandals, two rivals must choose: the easy path to glory or the hard road to each other. Passion is the ultimate game, and love is the final whistle. The Milanese sun beat down on the packed stands of the San Siro, but the heat was nothing compared to the glare of 1,000 camera flashes. Kai Sterling stood at the center of it all, a practiced smile fixed on his face as he held the deep red jersey with the number 10 emblazoned on its back. The roar of the crowd was a physical thing, a wave of sound that vibrated through the pristine grass and up through the soles of his custom-made cleats. This was the pinnacle. SC Monza, the prestigious Italian club, had paid a king's ransom to bring him from London, and he was here to be their new crown prince. "It is a great honor," Kai said into the forest of microphones, his voice smooth and confident, carrying the faint, marketable trace of a London accent. "The history of this club, the passion of Thetafosi. I am here to write a new chapter, and to bring silverware back to where it belongs." He executed the role perfectly, the grateful new star, the humble prodigy. He kicked a few signed footballs into the adoring crowd, and the cheers crescendoed. But from the corner of his eye, he tracked the other man on the podium. Lorenzo Vittori. The captain stood a few feet away, a statue of cool indifference. He wasn't smiling. His arms were crossed over his own jersey, his gaze sweeping the crowd with a detached, almost analytical air. He was everything the Italian press loved. Brutally handsome, relentlessly serious, a local boy made good. The Ice King of San Siro. And as Kai soon learned, his ice was real. The press conference moved indoors, into the air-conditioned chill of the executive suite. The questions came in a mix of Italian and English. "Kai, how do you respond to critics who say the transfer fee was obscene for a player who has never won a major trophy?" Kai leaned into the microphone, his smile never wavering. "I see it not as a price tag, but as an investment, and I plan on delivering a massive return." A smattering of laughter. He was winning them over. Then, a question was directed at Lorenzo, spoken in rapid-fire Italian. The captain's voice, when he answered, was a low baritone, cool and measured. He spoke for a moment in Italian before switching to flawless English, his eyes cutting toward Kai. "The club has made its decision. My job is to integrate the new pieces and win. That is all." The dismissal was subtle but clear. Pieces. Not partners. Not teammates. Assets to be managed. The formalities ended with a directive. The two of them were to do a joint photo shoot for the club's social media. They were herded into one of the stadium's exclusive executive boxes, now set up with lighting rigs and a photographer who buzzed with frantic energy. "Okay, boys, let's see some chemistry." Lorenzo, arm around Kai's shoulder. "Yes, like brothers." Lorenzo's arm came down, his touch firm and impersonal. Kai could feel the solid muscle beneath the fabric of his suit, a weight that was both possessive and restrictive. He forced his own smile, leaning into the pose, but the air between them was stiff. "Great, great. Now, maybe look at each other, like you're discussing a game-winning play." They turned. Up close, Kai saw the flecks of silver in Lorenzo's gray eyes, the faint scar bisecting his left eyebrow. He saw the absolute lack of warmth. "You know," Kai said, his voice low so only Lorenzo could hear, the charm dialed down to a casual, challenging tone. "For the sake of the photos, you could try to look like you don't regret this already." Lorenzo's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I regret the circus. I do not regret the player. Yet." His eyes dropped to Kai's mouth for a fraction of a second, so fast Kai thought he might have imagined it. "Prove you are worth the distraction." The words were a gauntlet thrown down. A thrill, sharp and unexpected, shot through Kai. This wasn't the polite professionalism he was used to. This was a challenge. This was fire beneath the ice. The photographer, oblivious, clicked away. "Perfect. That tension is fantastic. Hold it." And for the first time all day, Kai's smile became real. The Centro Sportivo di Monza was a temple of modern football, nestled in the rolling hills outside the city. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of freshly cut grass and the faint, industrial tang of deep heat gel. For Kai, this was a sanctuary far more real than the press conference podium. This was where he belonged. He arrived early, dressed in the new training kit, feeling the familiar thrill of a fresh start. The locker room was empty, silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. He found his spot, a locker with his name already etched on a plate next to Lorenzo Vittori's. The proximity felt deliberate, a continuation of the previous day's forced intimacy. He was lacing his cleats when the door opened and Lorenzo walked in. He moved with a quiet, efficient grace, a gym bag slung over his shoulder. He acknowledged Kai with a curt nod, nothing more, and began his own pre-training ritual at the adjacent locker. The silence was heavy, punctuated only by the rustle of fabric and the click of locker doors. "Sleep well, Captain?" Kai tried, the cheer in his voice echoing slightly in the tiled room. Lorenzo didn't look up from tying his boots. "Well enough. Looking forward to seeing what you can do out there," Kai pressed, unable to leave the quiet alone. "I've studied your tapes. Your pass completion rate in the final third is impressive." Finally, Lorenzo turned his head, his gray eyes assessing. "Statistics. The game is not played on a spreadsheet, Sterling. It is played here." He tapped a finger to his temple, then over his heart. "And here, in places numbers cannot measure." Before Kai could retort, the rest of the team began to filter in, the room exploding with noise, boisterous Italian, laughter, the thumping of bass from a portable speaker. Introductions were made. A back slap from the hulking Brazilian center-back, Carlos. A shy smile from the young winger, Giovanni. The dynamic was clear. Lorenzo was the undisputed leader, his quiet command earning respectful nods, while Kai was the fascinating, expensive new toy. On the pitch, under the watchful eye of Coach Ferrara, a grizzled veteran with a voice like gravel, the real session began. Warm-ups, possession drills, tactical walkthroughs. Kai moved with the fluid, instinctive joy that had made him a star. He was fast, his touches were deft, his vision expansive. He could feel the team's initial skepticism beginning to thaw with each clever pass. Then came the drill that changed everything. A high-intensity, small-sided game in a condensed area of the pitch. Two-touch only. The pressure was immediate, suffocating. Kai, a blur of red, received a sharp pass from Carlos. He took one touch to control it, his head up, scanning. Lorenzo, marking him for the opposing team, was already on him, a solid, relentless presence at his back. The physical contact was a jolt. Lorenzo was stronger than he looked, all coiled power and low center of gravity. "Time's running, golden boy," Lorenzo murmured, his breath hot against Kai's ear. The taunt, the heat, the pressure, it ignited something in Kai. Instead of playing the safe pass back, he feinted left, then rolled the ball right with the outside of his boot, spinning off Lorenzo in one graceful movement. It was a move of pure audacity, the kind that defied the disciplined structure of Italian football. For a second, he was free. He saw Giovanni making a run and lofted a perfect, weighted pass over the defense. It was a goal in the making, but Lorenzo had recovered with shocking speed. He hadn't been fooled by the feint. He'd anticipated it. He lunged, not with a brutal tackle, but with an impossibly long leg, intercepting the flight of the ball mere inches after it left Kai's foot. The thwack of leather against leather was a sharp, definitive sound. The move was so sudden, so perfectly executed, that Kai, mid-follow-through, lost his balance. His legs tangled with Lorenzo's and he crashed to the turf, the impact driving the air from his lungs in a soft gasp. Silence fell over the pitch. Kai lay on his back, staring at the bright blue sky, stunned. He felt the heat of humiliation creep up his neck. Then, a shadow fell over him. Lorenzo stood above him, not offering a hand. He was barely breathing heavily. He looked down at Kai, and for the first time, there was a flicker of something other than ice in his eyes. It was a spark of pure, unadulterated fire. Acknowledgement. Challenge. "You are fast. You are skillful," Lorenzo said. his voice low, for Kai alone. But you are predictable. You always choose the beautiful pass over the smart one. He held Kai's gaze for a moment longer than necessary, the intensity between them a live wire. The air crackled. Kai's heart was hammering, not just from the fall, but from the proximity. The scent of clean sweat and grass on Lorenzo's skin. The raw, competitive energy that felt more like attraction than animosity. Then, Lorenzo turned and walked away, barking an order to his teammates to reset. Carlos offered a hand and hauled Kai to his feet. "Do not worry, amigo," he said with a grin. "He does that to everyone the first time. It is his welcome." Kai brushed the grass from his kit, his eyes never leaving Lorenzo's back. The humiliation began to curdle into a fierce, focused determination. And something else, a deep, unsettling thrill. The rest of the session was a blur. Every time they were near each other, the space seemed to contract. During a water break, their shoulders brushed as they reached for bottles from the same cooler. Kai felt the contact like a static shock, jerking his hand back. Lorenzo's eyes snapped to his, wide with a similar surprise before the shutters came down again. Later, in the locker room showers, the steam clouded the air, thick with the scent of soap and the sound of running water. Kai was under one spray, trying to wash away the frustration and the confusing, magnetic pull he felt towards the man in the next stall. He turned his face into the water, and when he opened his eyes, Lorenzo was there, just on the other side of the tiled divider. Water sluiced over Lorenzo's shoulders, tracing the hard lines of his pectorals, the defined ridges of his abdomen. A tattoo of a stylized wave curled around his ribs, a surprising touch of artistry on his disciplined frame. Their eyes met through the steam. There was no one else in the shower room at that moment. The world narrowed to the sound of water and the few feet of charged space between them. Lorenzo's gaze was dark, unreadable. It dipped, once, down the length of Kai's body, a slow, deliberate assessment that was far more intimate than any touch. Kai felt his skin flush, his breath catch. It wasn't a look of challenge now. It was one of raw, undisguised attraction. Just as quickly, Lorenzo looked away, turned off his shower, and wrapped a towel around his waist, walking out without a backward glance. Kai stood alone under the spray, his heart pounding. He leaned his forehead against the cool, wet tiles, closing his eyes. Prove himself? Oh, he would. But it was no longer just about the game. It was about breaking through that ice. It was about discovering the fire he now knew burned violently beneath. And God help him, he wanted to get burned. The private jet cut through the twilight, a silver dart against a canvas of deepening violet and rose. Below, the coastline of the French Riviera glittered like a scattered necklace of diamonds. Kai stretched his legs in the plush leather seat, a glass of champagne in his hand. This was the life he was accustomed to, the effortless luxury, the blur of five-star hotels and exclusive events. Across the aisle, Lorenzo sat with a glass of mineral water, his gaze fixed on the view outside. He looked out of place in his sharp, dark Tom Ford suit. He belonged on the pitch, not in a first-class cabin. The silence between them had stretched for the entire hour-long flight from Milan to Nice, thick and heavy with everything left unsaid in the steam-filled showers. "Ever been to Monte Carlo before, Captain?" Kai asked, breaking the quiet. Lionel, the team's veteran French midfielder, answered for him with a laugh. "Lorenzo? He comes for the match, he plays, he leaves. He thinks the casino is a monument to foolishness." Lorenzo took a sip of water, his expression unreadable. "It is. It's also a monument to beauty, and money, and fun," Kai countered, a sly smile playing on his lips. "Or have you forgotten what that is?" Lorenzo's eyes met his, a flash of silver in the cabin's soft light. "Some of us have responsibilities that preclude fun, Sterling." The retort was on Kai's tongue, but the pilot announced their descent, and the moment was lost. An hour later, Kai felt the familiar thrill of being at the center of the universe. The Hotel de Paris was opulence incarnate. All crystal chandeliers, gold leaf, and the low, expensive hum of wealth. The charity gala for the World Ocean Foundation was in full swing. Women in couture gowns and men in impeccably tailored tuxedos swirled under the grand dome of the Sal Empire, their jewels catching the light. The air was a mixture of perfume, champagne, and the salty breeze from the marina just outside. Kai moved through the crowd with practiced ease. He gave interviews on the red carpet, charmed a countess, and accepted a flute of champagne from a passing waiter's tray. He was in his element, but his eyes, again and again, were drawn to the one still point in the swirling room. Lorenzo stood near a pillar, a dark sentinel. He wasn't engaging with the glittering crowd. He spoke briefly with the club's owner, nodded at Coach Ferrara, but mostly he just watched. His gaze was a physical weight Kai could feel across the room. Their directive for the evening, from the PR department, was simple: be seen together. Project Unity. The rumors of a rift are starting. It was Coach Ferrara who finally enforced it. He ambled over to Kai, clapping a heavy hand on his shoulder. Kai, go talk to him. Get a photo. The vultures are circling. Make it look like you don't want to kill each other. With a sigh, Kai navigated the crowd towards the pillar. He came to stand beside Lorenzo, both of them looking out at the party rather than at each other. Quite a circus, Kai said, repeating Lorenzo's word from the unveiling. It serves a purpose, Lorenzo replied, his voice low. The club's brand needs polishing. We are the polish. Charming. Kai took a sip of champagne. You know, for a man who hates this, you clean up rather well. He let his gaze travel over Lorenzo's suit, the way the fabric stretched across his broad shoulders. It was a deliberate, provocative look. Lorenzo finally turned his head, his eyes narrowing. And you perform your role perfectly. The charming, empty superstar. The words should have stung, but Kai heard something else beneath them. Not just disdain, but a flicker of something hotter. Jealousy, perhaps? Or frustration? Empty. Kai stepped a fraction closer, lowering his voice. You know nothing about me, Lorenzo. You've decided who I am based on a price tag and a highlight reel. I know you play with emotion, not with discipline. I know you care more about the beauty of the play than the result. I know that in a storm, you are a sapling that will break, not an oak that will stand. Maybe you don't need an oak, Kai shot back, his own temper rising. Maybe you need a lightning rod. A photographer approached, his camera raised. Lorenzo. Kai. For Gazzetta. A picture, please. The moment shattered, but the tension didn't dissipate. It sharpened, focusing for the lens. Lorenzo's arm went around Kai's shoulder again, but this time it was different. His hand settled not with impersonal firmness, but with a deliberate, heavy possessiveness. His thumb rested just above Kai's collarbone, a point of searing heat through the layers of his tuxedo shirt and jacket. Kai instinctively leaned into the hold, turning his face towards Lorenzo's. They weren't looking at the camera. They were looking at each other. The air between them vanished, replaced by a magnetic field of pure, unadulterated attraction. Kai could see the pulse beating at the base of Lorenzo's throat, could smell his clean, spicy cologne beneath the scent of soap. Lorenzo's gaze dropped to Kai's lips, and his own parted slightly. The camera flashed once, twice, 3 times. It was the picture that would be everywhere tomorrow. The Ice King and the Golden Boy, locked in a gaze that was anything but brotherly. It was a look of war and want and wild, desperate hunger. The photographer thanked them and moved away, but they remained frozen for a long second. The sounds of the gala, the music, the laughter, the clinking glasses, faded into a distant hum. Lorenzo was the first to break. He dropped his arm as if burned, the cool mask slamming back into place. But his eyes were turbulent, the silver churning like a stormy sea. This is a mistake, he said, his voice rough. What is? Kai challenged, his own heart hammering against his ribs. The photo? Or this? What of Earthasis? All of it, Lorenzo bit out. He took a step back, creating a chasm between them. We are teammates. That is all we can ever be. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd, leaving Kai standing alone by the pillar. Kai finally let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He reached for his champagne, his hand trembling slightly. He looked out at the glittering casino, the multi-million-dollar yachts in the harbor, the galaxy of stars above. For the first time in his life, all the glamour in the world felt empty. Because the only thing that felt real, the only thing that felt essential, was the man who had just walked away from him. And as he stood there, a slow, determined smile spread across his face. A challenge. That's what you think, Captain, he thought. But the game has just changed. London was a ghost of his past, draped in a familiar, damp chill. The match against Chelsea was a brutal physical affair, a battle fought on a rain-slicked pitch under the blinding glare of Stamford Bridge's floodlights. It was a game that demanded Lorenzo's discipline, not Kai's flair. Tackles flew in hard and uncompromising. For 90 minutes, they were soldiers, not potential lovers. Their interaction on the pitch was purely professional, a series of clipped passes and tactical gestures. But the undercurrent was there. When a Chelsea defender crunched into Kai, Lorenzo was instantly in the man's face. A silent, menacing presence that earned him a yellow card. The protective instinct was as surprising to Lorenzo as it was to Kai, who picked himself up off the grass, his eyes wide with unasked questions. They won 1-0. A gritty, ugly, beautiful victory. The tension in the locker room was celebratory, but between the two of them, it was a taut wire, stretched to its breaking point. It snapped in the hallway outside their rooms at the Savoy. "I don't understand," the team's harried logistics manager, Marco, was saying, wringing his hands. It was confirmed. 2 executive suites. "Lorenzo, yours has a plumbing catastrophe. There is water everywhere. They cannot have anyone in it tonight." Lorenzo stood, still in his club tracksuit, a bag slung over his shoulder. His expression was granite. "So find another room. The hotel is fully booked. There is a fashion week, a banking summit. I have called every 5-star within a mile. Nothing." Marco's eyes darted to Kai, who was leaning against his own doorframe, a strange, fatalistic amusement bubbling inside him. "Kai, your suite has a second bedroom, does it not? A proper one, not just a sofa." Kai's suite did. It was a sprawling, opulent space overlooking the Thames, with a master bedroom and a generously sized guest room, separated by a large, common living area. Lorenzo's jaw tightened. "No, out of the question." "Lorenzo, per favor," Marco pleaded, lowering his voice. "It is one night. The press is here. The last thing we need is a story about the captain being kicked out of his hotel. It looks unstable." The word unstable hit its mark. Lorenzo's entire career was built on a foundation of control. He glanced at Kai, his eyes a storm of conflict. Kai pushed himself off the doorframe and unlocked his door. "It's fine, Marco," he said, his voice casual, though his heart was thumping. "The captain can have the guest room. I promise I don't snore." He walked into the suite, leaving the door open. A silent invitation. A challenge. A moment later, he heard Lorenzo's quiet footsteps follow him in, the door clicking shut with a sound of finality. The suite was a study in Art Deco luxury, all rich woods and polished metal. The lights of London twinkled beyond the vast windows. Kai tossed his bag onto a plush armchair and headed straight for the minibar, extracting a miniature of whiskey. "Drink?" he asked, holding it up. "No," Lorenzo said. He remained standing near the door, a statue of discomfort in the elegant room. "Suit yourself." Kai cracked the bottle open and took a long swallow, the liquor burning a welcome path down his throat. He leaned against the bar, watching Lorenzo. "You can relax, you know. I don't bite, unless asked." Lorenzo ignored the provocation. His gaze swept the room, taking in the extravagant flower arrangements, the panoramic view, as if assessing a battlefield. "This is inappropriate." "What is?" "2 teammates sharing a suite? It's frugal. The fans would applaud your financial prudence." Kai took another sip. "Or is it me? Is it the fact that you can't stop looking at me? And it terrifies you?" Lorenzo's head snapped towards him. "You are arrogant." I'm observant. Kai put the empty bottle down. I saw the way you looked at me in Monte Carlo. That wasn't hatred, Lorenzo. It should have been. The words were ripped from him, raw and honest. He finally moved, walking to the window, his back to Kai. He looked out at the city, his shoulders rigid. This complication is the last thing I need. The last thing the team needs. Kai moved quietly, crossing the soft carpet until he was standing a few feet behind him. The reflection of Lorenzo's tormented face was faint in the dark glass. Why is it a complication? Kai asked, his voice softer now. Because. Lorenzo turned around, his composure cracking. The storm in his eyes was finally unleashed. Because I have spent my entire life building walls, building control. My family, they depend on me. My name, which my father nearly destroyed, depends on me. I cannot be this. He gestured wildly between the two of them. This is chaos. This is a distraction that could cost us everything. A title, career, a reputation. Who are you really trying to convince? Me or yourself? Kai took a step closer. The space between them was electric, humming with the truth that had finally been spoken. What if it's not a distraction? What if it's the thing that makes you play better? What if it's the thing that makes you feel something other than duty for the first time in your life? Lorenzo stared at him, his chest rising and falling rapidly. The distance between them was negligible now. Kai could see the faint tremor in his hands. You don't know what you're asking for? Lorenzo whispered, his voice hoarse. I'm not asking for anything, Kai said, his own voice dropping to a murmur. He reached out, slowly, giving Lorenzo every chance to pull away. His fingertips brushed against the back of Lorenzo's hand, a feather-light touch. I'm just pointing out what's already there. The contact was a spark. Lorenzo flinched, but he didn't pull away. He stood frozen, his gaze locked on Kai's, his breath catching. The air was thick with the scent of rain, clean sweat, and the expensive whiskey on Kai's breath. For a long, suspended moment, they stood there on the precipice. The sounds of London, the distant wail of a siren, the hum of traffic, faded away. The entire universe was this room, this silence, this single point of contact. Then, Lorenzo let out a shaky breath. The shutters began to close again, the fight for control visibly returning. He took a deliberate step back, breaking the contact, breaking the spell. Good night, Kai, he said, the words formal, strained. He turned and walked stiffly into the guest bedroom, closing the door with a soft, definitive click. Kai was left alone in the vast, silent living room. He could still feel the phantom heat of Lorenzo's skin on his fingertips. He hadn't won, but he hadn't lost either. The wall had cracked, and for the first time, Kai had seen the real man, vulnerable and wanting, hiding behind it. He smiled, a slow, sure smile, and walked to his own bedroom. The game was far from over. In fact, he realized with a thrill that shook him to his core, it had only just begun.